What I like about Germany on Sundays, you go out, and even the old people are drinking these huge, big steins of beer on Sunday. You turn on the TV shows on Sunday morning, where everybody's just sitting around talking about the week. Everybody's got a big beer. So you start Sunday morning. Am I wrong? That's just what I noticed. Is that a stereotype of Germany that I'm placing?
It depends where you're at, but it's not really.
So you're saying you don't start your Sunday with a big stein of beer?
Well, here in Berlin on a Sunday morning, it might be that you just are on your way home with a beer.
Okay.
Around this time range.
Oh, really? Like around 2 in the afternoon?
Yeah, the thing is, you could
Excellent.
go. Also, you could go to the Berghain later, but that's a different story.
We'll figure that out.
But that was a hoax, by the way, that you intended to find like a place here in Berlin, like permanently.
A hoax? No. Well, it's a desire for which there is no real reason, in order to pursue. Although, if we do it right, there's a couple of other projects that we have that if we could shoot in Berlin, that if they go on for a few years, there might be a reason to come in and say, rather than stay in a hotel every time we come to town, wouldn't it be nice to have just a little...
Yeah, I know exactly what it's like.
Turnkey kind of joint that, jump in and out of, little efficiency apartment, something like that.
No, that would make sense. The thing is, I enjoyed that movie, by the way. I found it very pleasant. It was really like a feel-good one that led me also think. But also, it made me realize in terms of you as a person, because the first time I saw you on the red carpet when I used to be a presenter for MTV, that was for 2002, Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, God. Oh, Lord. Long time
And
ago.
already back then, I was like, oh my God, that's Tom Hanks. And now, almost 14 years later, I'm still thinking that and still having to say that so much has been added to. So really, you an actor of such a magnitude, which there aren't so many anymore. So let's be honest about it. It's not being an ass kisser. It's just the facts. I mean, if I would start coming with all the great movies and all the roles that you've been doing, so the things the interview will be over right after that, and not even done. But the thing is, what I've been asking myself, with such a magnitude, is it easy for you just to get into such projects as Hologram for King, and such an art house thing where everybody would expect you to be in a big Hollywood blockbuster?
No, it's one damn thing after another. It really is. Now, look, on one hand, if I just wanted to say, oh, look, I'm just going to work now. Call me up, give me a job, give me an offer, and I'll be right there. I could do that. But in order to have a much more personal connection to all the work that you're doing, in order to be some brand of, artist that you'd like to claim to be, it has to have something more specific to it. It's got to have some danger. It's got to be a risky enterprise. You have to make the movie and wonder if anybody's going to care. Mm-hmm. But then you also have to have that alliance with somebody who has greater or equal or greater enthusiasm for what you're doing, and it's got to be the director, it's got to be the filmmaker somehow. And that when that comes along, it doesn't come along very often, but when it comes along, Tom would say, it's going to be so scary trying to make this film because who knows if anybody's going to understand what we're trying to do. Well, that's pretty great. Now, you end up, it's not a sure thing, but you end up taking the risk, and the risk is always that's always the fun part.
But talking about risk taker, because I was very surprised when I heard some reactions about the trailer already. Because in the past, I don't know when it
the American trailer is horrible. It's just a terrible.
I've just seen this one particular, and I know that in the past when it came to the Da Vinci Code, people have been asking you, what do you think about this conspiracy about Jesus Christ, and you said I'm just an actor. But for that matter, I was very surprised that people felt offended when there was this one particular funny scene where you were talking about this one building where they have executions happening.
Yeah.
And people are oh, that's the way of, it's disrespectful against the people there and this and that. I was but it's a funny scene. What's wrong about it?
And it's also authentic. Any American, first of all, they have public executions in Saudi Arabia. They simply do. There's nothing, whether good, bad, that's what they do in the country. No editorializing on it whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And if an American is in a car driving by and say, hey, what's going on over there? Oh, that's where they have the public executions. We would be freaked out. Now, is it funny? All right, it certainly is if you don't realize that that's what's going on. But I think if there's any true comedic value to it is that That's what I'd think if I was in the car and found that out. So it strikes you as real, and somehow when the truth is told, you end up laughing because it's like no one has ever thought about it except you. But yeah, I agree with that. That would be outrageous. And so and by the way, trailers are such insane things. On one hand, they're trying to lie to the audience, trying to convince them that the movie is nothing but a wacky, kooky, nutty kind of like comedy. And then they go to the movie theater and see it's something else. So, but that's part of the battle you fight just in order to get any movie made and out there.
But without giving up any spoilers, but I think like one very particular scene that I memorized like very pleasantly was between you and the character played by Zabita Shuduri. Mm-hmm. I got it right. Where you realize that that in common, I think also was kind of a cultural thing, that you have much more in common than you have opposed to each other. And I felt that this was kind of like setting the tone for the entire movie for some reason. That's how I read it.
Well, look, what do people want? People want to feel good about themselves. They want to belong to something bigger than themselves, so they're not alone. All of literature and sometimes all the great stories, I think, are always about combating loneliness. And Alan Clay has many reasons to feel that he's alone in this world and therefore feel lonely. And it's odd that a woman like his doctor, Dr. Hakim, should feel the same way. You would think, well, there's no reason for her to be feeling the same type of loneliness. But this is what human beings do. What do you want? You want to have a decent cup of coffee. You want to live in a nice place. You want to feel as though you're contributing to the betterment of the world and the general welfare of you and your family. It doesn't matter what culture you come from. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter if you live in a glass apartment overlooking the river, or if you live in a grass hut somewhere with a mud floor. You want to feel as though there is reason for you personally to feel good about the future. And I think, how many days are there in the 365? I think 200 days out of the year we don't feel good about the future. But on those 165 days we do, then it's worth being alive, isn't it?
I totally agree. And finally coming to this character, Alan Clay, who actually is in these circumstances because like everything went down through the globalization. China took over like the business that he was into before that. Now he has to deal like in Saudi Arabia, which is a total different kind of clientele. In your case, I mean, you still successful as an actor, also like very successful as a producer. But when was the last time that you had this point saying like, you know what? Screw it, I'm just going to go for something else.
Well, you kind of do that on every job. The truth is, nothing matters what you did before. You have to start all over from square one. You've got to convince everybody that it's a great idea. And as a producer, or when you start creating material of your own, you have this idea that you think can expand organically into something great. But other people have to see that same expansion. You make an alliance with those people who are going to be doing it as well. And I wrote and directed and acted in a movie called Larry Crown that I thought was fascinating, and nobody else did. So all you can do is say, all right, well, here's the reasons I did it, and later on I'll probably examine it to find out, well, did it go astray? And if so, was I part of the reason that it went astray? And that is universal to anybody that creates content. It doesn't always work. When it does, it's kind of like magic. How did it happen? And when it doesn't, you could sort of imagine why. Alan Clay in this movie is one of the reasons that the global economy went down the tubes. He rationalized away his part of it. He signed contracts in order to guarantee that his factory closed, that they stopped making bikes in Chicago, that Schwinn became nothing more than a nameplate on cheap Chinese bicycle frames. He thought that was good business at the time, and now he's playing the part. I, as an actor, have thought I was doing great business in movies that tanked, in movies that never got made, in projects that never saw the light of day, because I steered them to a place where they didn't work for anybody else. That is part of the artistic process that makes me as an actor, and I think other people still say, well, it's never going to happen again. That's it. I'm all done. And then you read this little thing, or a script comes in, or you have a conversation on the phone with somebody, and you think, oh, that'd be a great idea. And you get excited and you pursue it all over again.
Well, thank you so much for the interview and for letting me still enjoying Hollywood and the movies.
So you were on MTV, German MTV, on the carpet there with Leonardo?
2010. Yeah, that was also the only time that I saw him there. So ever since he got quite far from since then. So
Yeah, well, that was big. No, Leo's a smart guy, man. He and then he joined forces with Scorsese for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, just like that's his Zemeckis as for you.
Yeah.
I had an interview with Zemeckis about you. It was like, how come that actually Tom Hanks wasn't part of the walk? He's like, oh, he's too old. It's like, I bet
True.
that's the reason.
It's absolutely right. Couldn't have done it. I would have had to play the Ben Kingsley role.